But at that time, the Christians who or the believers in Yeshua
Mhm.
who were not Jewish were trying to follow the law, but they didn't know it. They weren't
Right.
learned in it really, just the little bit they had. And so they were messing up. So then when the Jews came back, the Jews were just, these, these Gentiles, they don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of bitterness and fighting and quarreling among them. And so when Paul writes this letter to the Romans, you've got to understand what was happening in those years before he sent
Right.
this letter. He had not visited. He had just heard from people like, oh
Yeah.
my gosh, the bickering going on over there. It's just chaos. And he is writing to basically get the Jews and the Gentiles in
Absolutely.
unity with one another. And he was arguing against different things. And
Even later in the book, like what, 13, 14, 15, he's talking about loving your neighbor because it doesn't
yeah,
matter if you're Jew and Gentile. You should be able to get along. We have the same savior. And that's again important. Whether we're Jews or Gentiles and we're believers in Messiah, we have the same savior and we are not to put each other down for
right.
what each other where they are, whether they're a new believer, a weak believer, or a strong believer. And those are kind of defined what it means to be a weak and what it means to be a strong believer. But let's
And you know what? I think where the rubber really hits, Steph, is the Jews were called to preserve the Torah through the
Mhm.
years. And if you
Yeah,
look at his disciples, they were Jewish. And I'm just paralleling like back then to even today and how we view the Jewish people, that they are the covenant protectors. They've been the Torah
yeah,
protectors. They have kept it and preserved it throughout the decades. I'm not saying they're perfect. They've added on
right.
man-made laws, which is what Paul was rallying against in
Yep,
Romans, the
right.
things that were added.
Mhm.
But I think the same issues or concerns apply today when we look at it. If you just think about Constantine and how all of this happened, it was, we're not going to be caught Judaizing. In other words, they were saying, we don't want you to be anything like the Jews. But they were given the instructions of God and they have preserved them for a really long time.
Yeah,
And so they do have something very valuable to teach us. And we need to not feel icky about it. We feel icky about it because they don't all confess Jesus as Messiah. One of my very strong beliefs in that is because the church teaches a lawless Messiah.
right.
He
Yeah,
abolished the law. So
yeah.
therefore, how could he possibly be? He can't be,
Exactly, exactly.
right? Looking for a Jewish Messiah who will
Keeps
abide
the
in the
law.
words of the Father. And they don't see that when they look at the church. They see the church looking very much like the world.
Yeah, and there's I probably won't be able to find it because it yeah, so here, John chapters chapter 5, and we both have talked about this verse before. For Jesus says this, for if you believed Moses, now when he says Moses, he's not just
It means
talking
the
about
Torah,
Moses the man.
right?
Yeah, he's talking about what did Moses write. If you believe the
Hmm.
writings of Moses, you would believe me, for he wrote of me. But if you do not believe his writings, how will you believe my words? And I think I remember reading that verse to people in a Bible study over 10 years ago and saying, "Look, this goes back to Deuteronomy 18." And but yet it went right over my head what he was saying. If you believe me, if you do not believe his writings, the Torah he wrote, how will you believe my words? And it's I'm blown away sometimes when I look back on these verses and realize I was blind. I didn't put all that together. The Lord had to show me. He had to open my eyes.